Can we go down this rabbit hole a little bit?
Yeah,
let's do it. So African Amazonian tribes.
Yes.
There's been a bit of research to suggest that they have like 70, 80, 100 grams of fibre a day, which is far more than the recommended 20 or 30.
Yes.
And it's been observed that they don't have autoimmune disease. And one of the links that's been made is, well, because their fibre intake's so high, but they also probably don't have antibiotics. Should we all just be trying to increase our fibre intake as much as possible because it benefits our microbiome?
I think we should be trying to achieve an intake that is comfortable for us, because if you don't want to be going to the toilet 3 times a day, then Well,
some people we know, because we run a program called Number 2. Some people go 3 times a day.
Oh yeah. So I think most people don't eat enough fibre. That's true in this country and in much of Europe and the States. So yes, there is a case for increasing it. Whether you want to continue to increase it to the sort of levels you find in Africa is I think an individual choice. But it's not just based on comfort. It's also based on the fact that for some people with gut disorders are fibre sensitive. So
that's fascinating.
Irritable bowel syndrome, for example, will be made worse, some forms of it, by too much fibre. And in fact, there's a special diet that seems to resolve that condition, which is specifically lacking in fibre sources.
So it's sort of dampening them down. Also, Crohn's disease, the exclusively liquid diet.
That's right. Yes. So you can't tell everybody that this is what they should be doing, actually. And so that's just another point. I know I've said too much probably about this little human study, but one of the things we did find was that the response to the prebiotic was dependent on whether you were Prevotella plus minus. So your bifidobacteria were much higher in the Prevotella minus group, and they were the main beneficiaries of the prebiotic in that group, whereas the Prevotella were the main beneficiaries in the other group. So I think we probably don't want to insist on a generalized recommendation for everybody, because it does depend
Makes
on
sense.
personal circumstances.
I mean, I get asked all the time, what should I do for my microbiome? Mm-hmm. You probably get asked it all the time as well.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Well, I think actually adequate fibre is one of them. Is one of them, because in terms of maintaining diversity, which we can discuss, but it's certainly the best way to do that. And there was quite an extreme American study, which I'm sure you've come across, where a group of subjects were put, a very short-term study, put on a purely plant-based, and what they regard as a purely animal-based diet. And they were very extreme forms. But the animal-based diet was pretty nasty in its consequences. You got sulfur-reducing bacteria, you got potential pathogens, all sorts of things coming up.
Yep.
The plant-based diet was promoting much more favourable.
I have not
groups.
met a single person yet who's gone plant-based, increased their fibre intake, ate more fruit and vegetables, cut their meat down, and not felt better. I haven't met anyone yet. Everyone feels better. Yeah. But that goes at odds, I guess, with something that you had in your book, and I can't remember the specifics, but you gave a ratio or a percentage of sort of how much of your digestive tract was designed or geared up to digest plants. Yeah. And humans were right at the kind of bottom, weren't they? At the top, you had your horses and your cows. Yeah. Cows.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Cats and dogs.
Yeah.
We were with the cats and dogs.
With the cats and the dogs. And that suggests that we're more carnivorous than omnivorous, as in we eat more meat. But so how does that work when everyone that we know looks better, feels better when they eat a really fibre-rich plant diet, yet most of our GI tract is geared up to digest, the meats, the proteins, and the simple sugars?
Well, I guess, the answer to this must lie in our early evolution and the sort of 5 million years of ice ages and what there was to eat, because, I think almost of necessity, probably humans did have a fairly meat-based or fish-based diet at that time, because they were desperately looking around our numbers were very low. We were marauding bands, with our axes and spears and going from place to place, just trying to find something to eat. Yeah. And, So yes, there would have been consumption of roots and berries and so forth, but probably meat was extremely important, and that may explain that digestive anatomy. But an interesting point, I think, is that probably at that time, the energy that you extracted indirectly through your microbiota was probably critical to survival as well. So, if you got some grass seed, if you got some not terribly digestible tuber out of the ground, and then you probably didn't get much direct energy out of that. But the fermentation that went on in the colon would have supplied critical additional calories. So,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So why do we think the microbes are there altogether? Is it for that reason? Or is it because they were on the planet before us?
Oh, way because they were on the planet before us, and we don't have any mechanism for excluding them. I mean, if maybe
born in a bubble.
well, that's the thing. I mean, I say that in the book as well. There's some suggestion in certain experiments that germ-free mice are less prone to get fat. There's also papers that say the opposite, but the fact is we don't have the choice to be germ-free.
No,
in our gut, we can't.
You'd be sat in a bubble for the rest of your life.
Well, you do it with mice. You have to feed them sterile food. You have to keep them in an isolator, etc., etc. So it's just not an option for us. And there's another interesting sidelight. Is yes, I mean, in a way, the digestive tract is external to us, isn't it? I mean, we have an acidic barrier in the stomach which kills a lot of the stuff that comes through the mouth. But otherwise, we're exposed to anything that's in the environment.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
And they are really everywhere, aren't they?
They are everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
They are everywhere. And so despite that, what's very interesting that you get host-specific species in, a lot of our species in our gut only exist in humans.
Yeah, that's something I want to talk about.
Yeah.
How is that even possible when there's microbes absolutely everywhere else, and we seem to just be colonized by what we call human microbes, and dogs are dogs microbes, and horses are horse microbes, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how is that a thing?
I think
the immune system?
It's I hadn't assumed it was the immune, but that may be part of it. Yes, but I mean it's evolution, isn't it? I mean the environment of the rumen is somewhat similar to the colon in the human, but it's not identical. And so, the species and the food supply coming in is very different because it's coming in directly. What goes in the animal's mouth goes into the rumen, whereas in our case, it's you get extraction. Stomach first, digestion, absorption, etc. So it's a very inevitably. The characteristics you need to be successful in the two systems are different, and that will lead to speciation. If, in addition, and this is the interesting thing actually to me, there is limited transmission between the environment and the gut. So most of the transmission is from parent to offspring, mother to offspring.
Yep. During those early years.
Exactly. But of course, it's not true with facultative anaerobes. So E. coli, there's plenty of work showing that a farm worker will pick up E. coli from the farm animals, the dogs, and etc. Because those organisms can transmit in droplets and exist. And to some extent, we mentioned spores earlier. I mean, the same is true for some. We don't know how many of the anaerobes are spore formers, but among the gram-positives, it's probably quite a lot more than we think. So there is the ability to transmit between hosts. So I think it's got more to do with adaptation to the particular environment. It is remarkable in humans because we're not that old a species that that we've differentiated in relatively small number of millions of years. But